In three, two, one, you are listening to the Real Spicy Podcast. My name is Gil Pedro, and we have another great guest on the podcast. So this one has actually been very highly anticipated because a couple episodes back, Michael Kloss came on here, talked about his journey, about moving across the country for a job, and he took his wife with him. And I'm not gonna lie, he really hyped you up a lot. But this guest, she did the same thing, moved across the country and continued to pursue an amazing career working with exotic animals. And because of all the hype that's going on right now, or that was going on, because it's slowly dying, because it seems like half the world already saw the series on Netflix, Joe Exotic or Tiger King. I'm like, yo, I got to jump on this. And let me interview someone who works with exotic animals. Give me the inside scoop. Is there any tea to spill? So this week I only know your name. I know your first and your last name has always been, well, I think I told you once. I always called you Kim Chibata, but it's not Chibata. and that's what I have you on my phone as well. Yo, I got to call Kim Chibata. And I'm like, I should probably know her last name. But this week we do have Kim Chibata on the podcast. No. Can you tell them what your actual name is?
So my name's Kimberly and then Carole Baskin, but I'm married now, so I guess you can call me Kloss.
Okay. Kimberly Kloss Chibata. All right, got it.
Chibata.
No, my bad. That's really fucked up of me to mess up your last name, but
it's hilarious.
I never changed it, and I just kept it like that on my phone. I was gonna say I kept it like that on the podcast. No, I kept it like that on my phone. But before we dive into this, we kind of talked before the podcast, and I had no idea that you went to the space launch yesterday. Where are they going, and where are you at right now?
So I live in Orlando, Florida, and the launch is Cape Canaveral. So that's about 30, 45-minute drive.
Yeah.
There was a lot of traffic, though, obviously, due to the launch. But my husband, Michael, went on Wednesday when they were supposed to have the launch. I was working, so I couldn't go. But they scrubbed it because weather was bad. And then I got lucky, and yesterday they decided to take that off. So we rushed over there. There's hundreds of people. Nobody's worried about coronavirus over there because there's hundreds of people just around each other. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Was it, so I've never been to a launch, or I've only seen them on TV. First of all, is those rockets, are they extremely loud?
Yeah. I mean, you're pretty far back.
Yeah.
Because first of all, there's tons of people. So you have to get there at like 7 a.m. if you want to get a good spot at the launch. It's at like 4:30.
Yeah.
So we're far back, but it's still amazing to watch astronauts and watch a rocket go up in space, even if you're far away.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's pretty cool. So there's not a lot of smoke. Are you guys choking up when it's going up in the air? Oh, no. So
again, you're pretty far from it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. That's kind of cool, though. Is that your first one?
No, we go to them all the time. So this one was the first one that actually had astronauts on it that I got to see, because the last time from the U.S. was like 9 years ago. So all the launches we've been watching are just small missions or satellites or things that go up, come right back down. So, but it's still cool to see all of it.
Okay. And where are they going again? Do you remember?
They went up and they met up at the International Space Station in space. And there's already 3 or 4 astronauts already up there that have been up there for 52 days. So the two met up with them at the International Space Center up there.
Okay. And are they going to Mars?
That's the goal.
Holy
not only are they eventually, I don't think it's this mission, but it's going to be another mission coming up. But what they're trying to do is do space travel for people like us, to where we could go to space and vacation almost.
Oh my God. Okay.
That's what the plan is for SpaceX.
Wow. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, we always say I can't wait for the future, or the future is gonna, remember back in
Hmm.
the day, like when we were a lot younger, we always talked about hovering cars, like that was the future.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, every cartoon when you talked about the future,
Mhm.
hovering cars. Every like fiction movie was about hovering cars. Unfortunately, we don't have hovering cars yet, but
We
I
almost have
can't.
everything out.
Yeah, we almost got everything else. We're still missing the hovering skateboard from Back to the Future.
Yeah,
Yes, we're
that would
definitely
have been a
missing
good
that.
one. I mean, they
But
had I mean, it wasn't hovering. What was that thing that came out a few years ago?
the one with
That
the
was like a
wheels,
skate. Yeah.
yes,
It had like the simulation of
yes.
that.
So this is how nerdy I am. So technically there is a hovering skateboard, but it
Mhm.
requires a special ramp, which is pretty much all magnets.
Magnets,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
That
you
makes
are
sense.
hovering, but you need to be on this special ramp designed
Sure.
specifically for that
Hmm.
special skateboard. But that's really cool, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about that just because I've never seen it, and I'm like, that's perfect for the podcast. That's great content for the
Yeah,
podcast, which is really cool. Thanks for sharing. I do appreciate that.
of course.
Um, so now I want to talk a little bit about you. Um, and I kind of alluded to that you working with exotic animals. So um, can you talk a little bit about that? So you started working with exotic animals in Las Vegas, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So about over 5 years ago now, yeah.
5 years ago. Okay. So not you haven't been in it like years, like
Mm-mm.
decades. Okay. So you're still fresh in the game, a couple years, which is awesome. So how'd you get into working with exotic animals in Las Vegas?
I think it all started, I mean, when I was young, I was that typical kid.
Hmm.
I want to work with animals. They're like my life.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
You get older, you need a job, you got to pay bills, and you get distracted. But when I was about 23, 22,
Hmm.
I kind of was like, I want to work with animals still.
Yeah.
And I haven't done anything to go in that direction. So I want to start going in that direction.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so I need to go back to school because I didn't finish my degree.
Yeah.
And then I was like, how do I start working with animals? Well, I need to volunteer
Yeah.
at somewhere. And I got in great connections with somebody who had tigers and had been training them for over 30 years. And
Yeah.
so his name was Dirk Arthur. He was
Uh-huh.
a magician in Vegas
Yeah.
from like the 80s. And he still was doing work to
Whoa.
this day.
Okay.
And so I had reach out to him and was like interested in volunteering and helping him while I worked a full-time job.
Yeah.
So he told me, he was like, we could always use extra help. So I literally just came to help clean up poop and clean up bushes
Yeah.
and just observing and
Yeah.
being around them
Yeah.
were amazing. And I did that for like a year, just worked a full-time job
Yeah.
on all my free time. I was there volunteering, working, getting to know the cats, getting
Yeah.
to learn things. And he eventually at that time got a new show
Yeah.
at the Westgate.
Okay.
And he hired somebody else to be the assistant trainer.
Mm-hmm.
But he offered me a job at that point because I'd worked for him for over a year for
Yeah.
free. And he was like, you can maintain the habitat. So the enclosures and do feeding and cleaning. And so I was like, of course, like
Yeah.
100%. I want to work with these animals.
Yeah. I've been doing this for free. It's time to get paid.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean, anybody you talk to who works with animals,
Yeah.
everybody starts somewhere. And most of it is volunteering and going to school.
Okay.
That's like the way you get in
Mm-hmm.
any direction you look at with
Yeah.
animals. So you have to put in your time, 100%.
Okay.
So I started working with him, and it was like a week before the show opened,
Mm-hmm.
and the assistant trainer broke his ankle, which you can't have a broken ankle
No.
with tigers.
No.
You
No.
can't. So my boss was in a huge pickle. And so he had offered to train me for that position and offered if I wanted to be an assistant trainer.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. So I started learning how to be an assistant trainer. And I mean, he took me under his wing. He taught me everything he knew.
Mm-hmm.
He dedicated his life to those cats. He loves those cats. And it was amazing working for him. He was an amazing person to work under.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot. And I got to work at his show for, I worked for him for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
The show ran for about a year.
Okay.
But it was best time of my life.
Wow. So well, so you went straight, you didn't go for like house cats, you went straight for like big ass cats. Okay.
Yeah.
So was it because this is new, obviously you've always had this idea of working with animals, and you went straight for one of the most dangerous type of animals as well. How was that experience first for you, especially because these are very deadly animals? How was that?
I think initially I didn't think like, I want to work with tigers for the rest of my life. But they were wild animals,
mm-hmm.
and I wanted experience. And so I started working with them, and I fell in love with them. I fell in love with working big cats, and this relationship and the bonding, and not only that, but this learning about them, observing them, being part of their everyday life is awesome. And I think after I did that, they've still been my favorite animal I've ever worked with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, how is that process? So like, I know a little bit about dogs, and you have to slowly introduce yourself, and they are very aggressive to newcomers, and everything is, especially bigger dogs. You're threatening, and when they look at you as challenging. Are big cats that way? How did they open up to you before it was okay for you to touch them and get closer?
So cats are that, but
Mhm.
on a higher level.
On steroids, pretty
So,
much.
yeah, I mean, obviously there's the danger factor.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, I worked with somebody who was very experienced.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't just from day one go in a cage with a tiger.
Yeah.
There was safety measures always in place. There was things that were supposed to be followed, because people can die.
Yeah.
You can get really hurt. So cats, when I worked with them, an example is if a cat is in an enclosure and you walk past it fast, they want to play with you. You'll see it. They'll chase you or try to pounce.
Yeah.
If you wear brightly colored clothes, sometimes that can excite them.
Okay.
In a playful way, that's playful to them, but not to you.
Yeah. They're a couple
because you're
thousand
much
pounds.
smaller.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it took a lot of time. Having a relationship with cats doesn't happen very quickly. It takes time. And that's why you see people who work with animals. It's really dedicating your time and your life to animals, because relationships are one of the biggest part of working with animals.
Yeah.
And cats, the relationship is super important.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a relationship, there's no, I don't want to say trust, but it's like that animal doesn't know you, and now you're in their area and they're in closure. Yeah. So it's just, relationship is probably number one, honestly.
Okay. So in the beginning, did you ever feel like prey around them?
At first it is intimidating, even just being around their enclosures.
Yeah.
Like walking by them, even though they can't get you.
Yeah.
It's you feel that forcefulness that comes from a big animal.
Yeah.
And I will say over time you get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you see, sometimes people get comfortable, which is where you never want to be, is too comfortable.
Yeah.
But you do over time, that feeling fades a little bit. Okay. Because you feel closer to them. You have a relationship, and it's kind of like that feeling in the beginning. Yeah. You don't feel it as much. Okay. Because you get closer to them.
Yeah.
So you're not as scared, but you still want to be aware.
Did you ever come close to experiencing an attack or something that you were fearful for your life?
No.
Oh, good.
I thankfully didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I worked with a person who had 30 plus years of experience.
Yeah.
He was a very, very safe person.
Yeah.
He did everything. Safety's number one. And your job as a backup trainer is to have his back.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's walking a cat, I'm there.
Yeah.
If something happens, if it's just, you want to be there as a backup. Mm-hmm. And it's good for anybody with any wild, like really dangerous wild animal to have a backup.
Yeah.
So there were times where maybe if we were walking them or something, where they would just want to go a different direction.
Yeah.
But we were always enclosed in a safe area where if they did, there's really nowhere for them to go. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there was never times where like a cat was going to attack me or anything like that. And I think that's due to my boss being really good at what he does and being very safe, because he has to look out for his safety and my safety, my safety or the staff's safety.
Okay. Because everything pretty much falls on him as the leader of this group and this project. Okay. So
and he wants the cats to be safe.
Yes.
So you have to look out for everybody.
Yes.
Animals included.
Yes. So now a little bit about the show. Were you part of the show, like on stage?
I was. So
really,
it was awesome.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So now I didn't know that about you. So now technically on your resume, you said, yeah, I had a residency in Las Vegas, pretty much.
Yeah. Again, working for my old boss,
mm-hmm.
I got to do also, I used to do office work.
Okay.
So he had a lot of meetings and paperwork and doing employee payroll. And so I was like, I'm a do-it-all girl. I'll help you with all that.
Okay.
So I used to go to these meetings with him, with big executives, and be there putting proposals together and doing employee payroll with him. Uh-huh. So I got this business aspect that was great. And I learned a lot, especially on Vegas Strip, like with shows and entertainment. It's a
dog world too.
Oh yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to want it. If you want a show, that's what I love about Vegas. Yeah. It's like, if you want it, you got to work for it.
Hell yeah.
Free.
Yep.
And you got to keep that mentality.
Okay. Which it seems that you kept it, because I mean, you're very successful at a very young age, working in a job that is very competitive, especially now with all the media attention behind it. But even then, you have organizations, third-party organizations that are against entertainment with animals. A big one would be PETA. What's that big ass circus? Hopefully you can remind me. Barnaby and Bailey.
Bailey's.
Yes.
Yeah.
PETA went after them, and they were successful in no longer using elephants as part of their show. And then slowly but surely, PETA is getting their way.
Well, they ended up ending all their shows completely.
Barnum and Bailey? Really?
Yeah. I saw one of their last shows.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm telling you that these third-party nonprofit organizations are getting their way. And yes, I get it. It's for the benefit of the animal.
Yeah.
And I understand all that. But it's also, it's someone else's job. And so with that all being said, did maybe PETA or another third-party company, did they ever interfere in what you're doing in Las Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, this whole issue is a gray area.
Yeah.
For any way you look at it.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those things that you always want to improve.
Yes.
Because that's what's best for the animals.
Correct.
Right. So even in your own personal career, you want to grow and be better. And especially when it comes to animals, you want to grow, because the better you are, the better that'll be for them.
Yes.
So I see both sides of both issues.
Uh-huh.
But when I was in Vegas, PETA did come heavily after the show I worked at. They used to follow us. film us, protest outside the show.
Yeah.
That was very, very common.
Really? Okay. Well, first of all, that did it ever get hostile for you, and did you ever feel maybe harassed?
Definitely. I mean, obviously more of it went to my boss
Okay.
because it's his show.
Yeah.
I work for him, and it doesn't mean that I won't get attacked at all.
Yeah.
But more of the heat was on my boss.
Yeah.
And my boss was very unplugged for us, so like social media.
Okay. Good.
But I would see things, and it would make me worry or concern. But
Yeah.
he's been doing it so long that I think he's so used to it, accustomed.
Yeah.
And at the time, I wasn't. I was new to the animal world.
Got it.
So I was learning this as it was happening. So
Okay, so I think the news and the media coverage on it, you always see the worst of the worst. So when you briefly mentioned it back in the day, I remember talking with you and your husband Michael about PETA, and I thought nothing of it in a sense of what level it was. I always assumed that because in the media, all you see is like the extreme of the extremes. So and this was years back when he told me this, and I heard PETA, I'm like, oh crap, they probably wanted to fight. They probably got a little bit more violent. They probably got on stage and heckled or what's the it's not a photo bomb, but when they interfere the show. That's what I assumed. I just never asked questions. I was like, that's a very touchy subject. Let's not talk about that, because it did say that you were stressed out.
It can be. I think it's how you look at it and how you handle. So, I mean, our show was a magic show.
Yes.
So people were not allowed to record because there's magic tricks.
Yes.
But PETA people would buy ticket and film so that they could, push their platform online. They did used to, like I said, protest outside.
Okay.
And they would like dress up in tiger outfits and put themselves in like a dog crate.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they used to like follow us when we would drive and like film us, or like my boss's is like where the cats would be housed.
Yeah.
They would try to put cameras over the wall and film the cats or their enclosures. So, I mean, and that's all stuff you could just find online.
Yeah.
And you can find that with many animal like facilities through PETA. I think it's the aggressiveness is sometimes can be scary.
Yeah.
Because they do things to send a message.
Okay.
So, and it's how far they push that. Sometimes that becomes uncomfortable for the people, for the animals, and could be dangerous for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for those that are watching, as she was talking about PETA and them buying tickets, I low-key rolled my eyes. I'm like, oh, what? Because I think about the situation, especially when people want to cancel certain companies. So a couple years ago, Nike did an ad that people wanted them to be canceled. And what they do, they burn their Nike apparel that they already owned. And I've always looked at it as like, why are you burning stuff that you own? They already have your money.
Got your money.
Yeah. So the fact that you said PETA, a couple people from PETA bought tickets. Okay. So they support the show by buying tickets. And now instead of enjoying the show, they just wasted money because their goal is to interfere in the show, or they're so focused on something else that literally they just wasted money and supported the show without even knowing it, in a sense.
Yeah. It's, like I said, it's just a lot of it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's just a little too much. I believe in fighting what you believe for, especially if it's for animals, or if you and I disagree on certain animal, that's fine. Discuss it. Go to local governments.
Yeah.
Fight for bills, create laws, do things that are going to change things instead of harassing people and following them and like sending threatening message. It's a little much.
These are stories that I always heard about, and I've always wanted to talk about them with people, but I know there's such a touchy subject. And I'm like, let's not bring it up yet. But the podcast has given me that ability to kind of learn about all these stories on a firsthand experience, because you can just read articles, but it's all media, it's going to be
Yeah.
hyped. It's going to be over exaggerated.
Or filtered.
Very filtered. And the way that you stated it, it's not as bad as I thought it was. Yeah, it sucks, but it's not as bad as I assumed.
Yeah.
But back to the magic show, what was one of the coolest things yes, I know that you worked with animals, but what was the coolest thing about the show that you couldn't believe? Obviously, I do want to respect the art of magic and
Oh yeah.
protect what help me on this one, protect the
Yeah, just
integrity
the
of the
art of
actual.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you magician never reveals his secrets type of
No.
thing. But what was the coolest thing that you've experienced on the magic side?
I think the best part was honestly learning about magic, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything about magic before this.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing how they made the illusions and how the tricks worked were really awesome,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know much about magic. I mean, I've seen it as a kid,
Yeah.
you see like magic, or I mean, we grew up around Siegfried and Roy,
Yep.
and how amazing they were. So I think for me, it was like learning something that I never knew was as cool,
Yeah.
until I saw it myself, and I was like, wow, that's crazy that illusions work this way or the trick works that way.
Yeah.
So that was probably the best part, honestly.
Okay, so being part of the show, did it take away the exciting factor? Because now you know how they work, you know the secrets behind them. Did that kind of ruin magic for you when it comes to, maybe, I don't know if you've seen another show after that, but did it ruin any of that that suspense, that illusion? Or is it still like, I know how it works, but it's so cool to still watch?
I think it's more like I dissect things now.
Yeah.
So when I see tricks, I try to figure out like in my head, like, okay, well, how would that work? Like, or I see something and I'm like, oh, I know how that one works. And I feel like kind of like cool, because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I know how that works. I'm so cool. Which is like the dumbest thing. But I have seen like other magic shows and stuff. And now I'm like critiquing magicians, because it's like one of those things, like when you watch like American Idol and you're like, oh, that person can't sing, and you're like, well, you can't either.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's like I can't do magic, but I
Yeah.
feel the need to like dissect it now, like some expert that I'm not.
Oh, I mean, that's a lot like sports. You have all these people
Yeah.
that talk shit about sports and their teams and their players, yet, bro, you don't know how to play
You can't
sports.
even
Why are you
play.
talking? Yeah. Or you have that guy, I would have gone pro, but back in, I was like, did you play college ball? No, because in
No.
high school, I pulled my ACL, and I had top 10 colleges looking at me, but ever since that ACL, I was like, bro, stop lying. Like,
You're
I,
like, nah.
I get all those people that talk about how they could have gone to a top 10 university, and, if they kept it up, they would have
You're
gone
like,
pro.
uh-huh.
Okay, whatever. Okay,
I think
so
it's just human nature,
yeah.
you know?
When I asked Michael Kloss, how that decision going across the country, he mentioned you. He moved because of his career, and you being a supportive, significant other and wife now, you went with him. How was that? Were you scared of not finding a job in the same field? Because obviously you can find a job anywhere, but
Yeah.
is it going to be in the same field, a field that is super, super competitive, very, very limited? How was that process for you?
I think first to start off, I thankfully married a great person,
Uh-huh.
because the first thing we talked about was my career.
Uh-huh.
So is this something that we can do that's going to benefit both of us? Not
Okay.
just, okay, so he got a job offer.
Uh-huh.
At the time I was actually on a hiatus. So the show had been closed for a while.
Yeah.
I was still working with the cats, but I was doing it technically for free, because my boss didn't have work coming in, and I
Yeah.
wasn't going to charge him when we were trying to get back up, but we weren't sure if the show was going to get back up. So
Yeah.
at that time, I wasn't technically making like an income.
Uh-huh.
So, Michael had gone out to Florida and was working, and he got the job offer, and we had talked about, we didn't have a lot of time to make a decision, but it was kind of like, is this something that could benefit both of us? And so Florida, because there is a lot of animal stuff. This is like a tropical ecosystem.
Yes.
So there's a lot of animal stuff. And he's like, there could be good opportunities out there for you. And so I did a little research. We talked about it. It was definitely like a mutual decision that would be good for both of us. So when we moved here, I didn't have a job. But I'm more of a jump and then just figure it out. Michael is more like meticulous and planning than I am. I'm just like, we'll figure it out when we're there.
Yeah.
And he's like, we got to plan, like we have to prepare. So that's why I think we work well together, because we kind of even each other out.
Yeah.
But I definitely was like ready to start something new in my life. And so I think moving sometimes has that feeling like you have a fresh start, clean slate, and you can just like build from this like fresh slate. And so it was exciting. It was a little nerve-wracking, obviously, because I've never left the West Coast. I've lived there my whole life. Mm-hmm. So I think it was exciting, but I think when you get there, you know, it's hard in the beginning. You don't have friends. We don't have family out here. So you're just kind of, you have each other and my dogs, and we were just like, we're going to figure it out. And we did, but it takes time.
Absolutely. So you moving to Florida, you kind of just mentioned right now that you got to work with animals. What was the first job in Florida working with exotic animals? Because did you stay with tigers or did you end up doing something else?
So I ended up working with other animals, a lot of different animals, but not necessarily big cats.
Yeah.
The first job, it took me about 3 months, was actually the job I still have now, which is with Universal Studios. So I work for a third-party company.
Yeah.
So we do like the shows in the park, like animal actors.
Yeah.
And the company I work for also does like production work. So we do like movies and television, commercials. So I work with quite an array of animals now, but it's like I work with domestic dogs and cats. Because I mean, you won't even notice, but if you watch commercials, you'll see like a dog walk across, you know, in a commercial. So things like that. But I also work with like birds of prey, which is pretty much like owls and hawks and macaws. And so a lot of other random like porcupines and stuff like that, like random animals now. Yeah. So that was technically the first job, and I still have that.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that is so awesome. So being in Florida, the stereotype that I always hear, crocodiles or alligators, one of them
it's alligators.
Is alligators. Have you worked with alligators yet?
Yeah. So I after a year of living here, I had told Michael, like, I really want to work with like Florida wildlife, because Florida has its own ecosystem. So, I mean, you know, you got your gators out here that are very popular. So I was like, I want to work with gators, like just to see what it's like. Because I hadn't had the opportunity to work with them yet. So after a year of living here, I started working at a smaller zoo out here. And so I actually started doing alligator feeding. So I was trained on it. So I used to go on a bank, like 20 alligators, 30 alligators, and I would hand feed them. And then I got to learn a lot about animals here just in Florida, which was the best part of the job, because I didn't know a lot about the ecosystem here yet. I mean, I grew up in the desert, so not a lot out there.
No.
So, you know, here there's like so many different types of birds, and you got gators, and there are the American crocodile that's out here. And I got to work with a lot of reptiles and coyotes and cool things like that. So and the Florida panther, I did work with panthers, which was awesome. So it was kind of cool because it gave me like a crash course on Florida.
Yeah, because Florida is so unique. Yeah, you are right. It has its own ecosystem, you know, when it comes to animals, but also when it comes to people. It's its own ecosystem as well. Working with alligators, that's something that I want to touch about. Okay, maybe this is just like the nerd in me. Do you have to dress up like Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter?
So the Steve Irwin stereotype, which it's like, again, it's a geeky joke for animal people. Yeah. So you'll even see it at zoos. Tan khaki is the color. It's what anybody who works with animals wears. I'll be honest, I hate it. I hate it. Like it gets so dirty. It's not the most comfortable clothing, but it's just what animal people wear. I don't know who made that decision years ago in a safari in Africa, but that's the clothing we wear.
Okay. Yeah. I just had to ask because you are right. It
Yeah,
is
I
like the
did.
geeky
I
joke.
looked Steve Irwin-ish,
The-
like not exactly like him, but I had the khakis,
yeah. The high socks, the boots, and everything.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
that.
had the boots because it was muddy because
Uh-huh.
Florida's got lots of murky mud, but you
Yeah.
got the khaki shorts. And the scientific-ish reason behind it is
Mhm.
they're neutral colors. So like I said before with tigers, if you go in wearing, perfect example, little children. Okay, so little children are colorful and they're loud and they're blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
That is like a toy to a tiger. So it's the perfect example of like when you come in with bright colors,
Mhm.
it throws them off and they're like, "Oh, I want to play with that."
Yeah.
These bright colors or things with really weird patterns. So that's why you see like kind of like khaki and tan because they're
Yeah.
such a neutral color. They don't tend to offset animals or make them feel weird or throw them off or make them excited,
Yeah.
which is you don't want that with like a tiger. You don't want
No.
them excited.
Yes.
So that's kind of why that's like the animal trainer, animal caretaker color.
Okay. Oh, well, that actually makes a lot more sense. And for
Yeah.
me, I just had to ask the Steve Irwin uniform, the stereotype, with working with different type of because there's no longer just big cats. You're working with exotic animals from a different array of animals as well. What has been your favorite type of animal now in this new ecosystem?
Um, so I think I've noticed the farther my career goes on, you make connections and not even necessarily you care about what animal it is.
Hmm.
Sometimes I think when you work with such a large array of animals, you just make connections to certain animals. And
Okay.
so along my career here, just in Florida, so obviously like I loved my big cats. When I go back home, I still go see them
Oh,
and I love to just keep it that contact,
yeah.
with my old boss. And like I said, him and I are very close. And the cats were probably my favorites.
Hmm.
But since being here in Florida, like I said, I did work with some coyotes that I at the time became very, very close to. And I didn't know a lot about coyotes and like the plight of coyotes.
Hmm.
But it was really educational for me and I just bonded with them. I didn't really intend to, but I did. And then now since I've worked with Universal, I've gotten to work with a Eurasian owl that I really got close to. I also have some dogs that I trained, and it's hard not to get close to dogs
Oh
because
yeah.
they just
There's
love people.
yes.
And I've worked with some cravens, which are crow raven mixes, and I've gotten
Oh,
close to them. And just how intelligent they are, and maybe I'm closer to them than they are to me, but you feel these connections sometimes with certain animals and you don't always intend for what the animal is. I think it's just like the personality and
mhm.
certain things you like about them that connect with you on a personality level. And like there's one macaw too I work with. Her name's Millie and I love that macaw.
Okay. It's so working with these birds, um, do you have to wear that leather glove?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I have one for birds of prey you do. So like
Okay.
macaws you don't, but when I've handled like the Eurasian owls.
Mm.
I worked with vultures. It's very common to use the bird of prey. It's like a
Okay.
leather glove.
Yeah. So even with that glove, does it still hurt? Because I've seen pictures. These claws are massive, and when they land, they dig in. Um,
Yeah,
does it still hurt even with that leather glove?
it's the pressure.
Uh-huh.
So like the Eurasian owl that I worked with, we normally use a double glove for her. So it's
Mhm.
like you have a glove and then you have an additional leather piece that goes over.
Okay.
Um, not only because of the length of their nails, but when she's uncomfortable. So birds are very finicky.
Mhm.
I have a lot of friends out here that are bird experts, and I've learned a lot about birds because they're their own thing.
Yeah.
Um, and you'll find in the animal community, there's different types of people. Like there's bird people, there's cat people, there's primate people. And each one's different.
Yeah.
But it's the pressure. So when I've had them on the glove and they're uncomfortable, because
Mhm.
that's kind of how they let you know, like, hey, I'm uncomfortable, and they
Yeah.
just tighten. And so it's the pressure of the tightening. It's not so much that they're going to cut you or,
Yeah.
get through your hand. It's just the pressure of the strength of their, claws that hurt.
Oh, okay. See, this is something that I never knew. I've always seen that glove. I'm like, wait, okay. But the more pictures I see, and the more they kind of like when they go out on talk show, they always have that glove.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what is like a little thin piece of leather going to do? But now it makes sense, especially with these animals. You kind of need to double it up.
Oh yeah. And I mean, some of their claws get really, really sharp.
Hmm.
So the glove obviously protects you from being cut,
Yeah.
or some of them could even go through, I mean, muscles and like through your hand or your arm. Cause again, when that pressure comes on, the
Hmm.
glove is, even though it looks quite thin, it's very durable because it's like a leather.
Hmm.
So it definitely saves you. It
Okay.
would not be fun handling them without it.
Okay, yeah, true, very true. So now that you work with again with a ton of different animals, the animal that I've always been so fond of has been primates. Have you worked with primates of any sort?
I have not. So the company that I work for with Universal, we
Hmm.
used to have orangutans.
Okay.
It was very common in our show. By the time I started the show, they had retired the orangutans.
Oh.
I had the pleasure of meeting them
Hmm.
and getting to just meet them, be
Yeah.
around them a little bit, and interact with them a little bit. And that is amazing.
Yeah.
Primates are definitely on another level,
Yeah.
because of the intelligence and the strength and the size and how close they are to humans.
Yes.
It's really interesting. But yeah, I haven't worked with them a lot, but I do think they're an amazing animal, and the people who work with them are special people because it's a lot to take on.
Yes, yes, it is. I mean, the smaller ones, they're feisty in their own way. Kind of like I feel like the smaller primates, uh, like the stereotypical like circus monkey.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
those are the ones that I always look at, and I'm like, they have small man syndrome because they get feisty from the videos that
Yeah.
I've seen and stories that I've heard about.
Yeah, I've been around some smaller primates,
Uh-huh.
monkeys, and they definitely feel like they got something to prove.
Yes.
Because they tend to be a little bit more aggressive, a little more feisty,
Uh-huh.
and you see that with bigger animals versus smaller animals.
Mhm.
Perfect example, only because I worked with cats, I know this.
Yeah.
If you look at the way the cat eats, it's important. So tigers, when they eat,
Uh-huh.
they lay all the way down. They're in a relaxed state,
Oh,
right?
okay. Yeah.
But you look at a smaller animal, like maybe a bobcat, serval,
Hmm.
or maybe possibly like a snow leopard. They eat with their back legs up, their front legs down.
Hmm.
They eat in a ready position, which pretty
Okay.
much means if they had to go in a second, they could.
Yeah.
So I feel like it says a lot about their personality is the way they eat is I'm top of the food chain. I'm not top of the food chain.
Yes.
So I think you see that not necessarily specifically with primates, but you can see it with all animals from
Hmm.
bigger to smaller, who's top of the food chain, who's bottom of the food chain, and
Yes.
how they eat or, stuff like that. So I think smaller animals,
Have something to prove.
probably have to flee more
Yeah.
or be prepared to put up a fight, versus a bigger animal. They're like, I'm bigger. What are you going to do?
Yeah, for some reason, all I keep thinking is Ariana Grande. I think she tweeted one day, "Big dick energy," and that's what I feel like
It is.
of a tiger. They got that big dick energy. They're like,
They
"What?
do.
Come at me! I got nothing to fear." It's
Hmm.
overconfident, which is great. So with all this talk is something that I wanted it to touch about, and and that is, as we kind of discussed in the very beginning, the hype uh, among the tiger community because of a documentary series on Netflix called Tiger King. I wanted to touch about that right now because that documentary made the entire big cat exotic animal community seem like it's this massive community of so many people throughout the entire US. And although it's like a few people, they made it seem like it's a lot bigger than what it is. But from articles that I read, it doesn't seem to be very true. And instead of maybe reading these articles, I got to ask you, is the exotic animal big cat community really as big as the documentary made it seem like?
You know, it's one of those things. So everybody kind of knows that Tiger King was somewhat created to be sensationalizing, right?
Yes.
To be like an eye catcher, and oh my God, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
These people are crazy. I can't believe there's people like this in the in the US doing these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not an expert. I've worked with animals. I've had some amazing times, amazing experiences. I'm not at all an expert, so to say, in what I do,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think there's as many as people think there are
Mm-hmm.
in, here in the US. I mean, there are people that are private owners. There are laws that are changing, and there's a lot of people. I mean, you could see it in the news. Just look at like PETA reports about this place closing or that place closing. So there probably was a lot more. I definitely think those numbers have somewhat diminished.
Yeah.
And you also have to think a lot of these people who were owning cats, back in the day are older now.
Yeah.
So maybe not. I mean, even when you hear about Carole Baskin, and her ex-husband, had all these cats. And I mean, I know he's not there anymore, but that kind of cat trade and stuff, because of laws, doesn't exist as much anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there aren't any loopholes or that you can't still own cats, but you have to jump through a lot more hoops to get there.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people who own cats have owned them before these laws were probably in place.
Yeah.
And have had these cats for some time now. And over time, those cats will probably pass. They probably won't be able to get any more cats due to new laws. So I think the numbers will continue to diminish depending on how many there are even left. But I don't think there's as many as they're trying to make seem.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't have specific studies on it. I have kind of like you, I've read into it a little bit to see, because I mean, Tiger King, everybody was like sensationalized by it. So you're going to do some research.
Yes.
On what the actual numbers are, but statistically what I've seen, it's not as much as it's being depicted as.
Okay. Well, it kind of makes sense. I mean, these documentaries on Netflix, regardless of the topic, it's always sensationalizing. Whatever the topic is, they exaggerate it. But I mean, you have to do that because we live in a world where everything has to be clickbait. You only have a couple seconds to grab someone's attention, or else you lose them. I mean, that's the same thing for media. With the news, there's something. We are attracted to negativity. And that's how the media gets you. When it comes to these documentaries, they have to exaggerate personalities. They have to exaggerate the situation to grab you. And I'm not gonna lie, that documentary, it grabbed me.
Great.
It was such a great, well thought out documentary in a sense of it was
entertaining.
Here's a group of people, and this is how crazy their life is. And also there's this gay exotic animal lover of big cats as well, and his name is Joe Exotic, and this is how crazy he is. And oh my God, did it work? Because everybody, I think, okay, maybe you can agree with me. I think, well, I don't know about with Corona, but it might be the new favorite Halloween costume this year. People are going to be Carole Baskin
100%.
or Joe Exotic.
100%. Carole Baskin and Joe Exotic outfits are going to be everywhere on Halloween if people are allowed to go out.
I know, right? Yeah, that's everything's a big if. But
yeah, huge.
With you being in this world, working with exotic animals, did you know of? Because I want to ask you about both people. So let's talk right now about Joe Exotic. Did you know about who Joe Exotic was before the documentary came out, or were you just hit from a left field?
So I personally didn't know Joe Exotic.
Yeah.
I like I said, I was a West Coast person. A lot of cat people in the community, and even just the animal community. But like I said, in the animal community, people kind of go into their groups. So most people are like, oh, I'm going to dedicate my life to cats, or oh, I'm a bird person. I dedicate my life to birds or primates, or et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of people in the cat community do know of each other. So you'll hear talk, shop talk about other cat owners, and people, especially in today's society, are so like to just talk about other people. So you hear cat people talk about like, oh, this person's facility, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you ever meet the person. So because I was on the West Coast, I don't recall ever hearing anything about him. When I got to the East Coast and then I saw the documentary, I was like, oh, this Joe guy's crazy. And then afterwards, I found out that a lot of people that I knew or do know that are cat people know him personally. So then I've been seeing them post things like nonstop. And I'm like, oh my God, there's so much to this story. It's so entertaining.
The things that you didn't see on the documentary, now you get to see either the truth or even dive deeper into the truth.
You see people's opinions based off of if they know him or they don't know him. So I, like I said, for me, Joe specifically came out of left field, but afterwards I didn't notice how many people I knew that knew him or knew of him before I ever did. So that's been entertaining for me, but I personally, Joe specifically, I didn't know him.
No. Okay. And then
it's entertaining to watch.
Okay. So with you being in Florida, Carole Baskin being from Florida, obviously not in the same city, but her being in Florida, did you know of her before all this came out? Or again, was that another Joe Exotic situation? Like, holy crap, who are these people and why is she so damn crazy?
So Carole, I actually knew when I was in Vegas.
Oh, okay.
Out of left field there. So I knew about Carole when I first started working with cats. The only reason is that she attacks other people who have cats. So like I kind of touched on PETA a little bit before, what she would do is that she would reach out to PETA or whatever connection she had, and would attack other cat facilities around the US. So not just in Florida. And I mean, you saw that with Joe Exotic because he was like in Oklahoma and she's in Tampa. So I knew about her because she used to attack the place that I worked at when I lived in Vegas.
Okay.
So I knew about her back in the, when I first started working with cats, and I'm like, this lady's kind of crazy because she's like in Florida attacking us in Las Vegas.
Yes.
So for me, I always kind of already knew about her, kind of had, my own opinion about her a little bit, just because she's very aggressive with how she goes about things, kind of like the whole PETA route a little bit. But I mean, you got to give it to her. She does do exactly what I said at the beginning, which is she goes to lawmakers. You want to make a change, it's through politics. And girl did it that way. And so that's how she's kind of been able, she wants to be the only cat facility is really what she wants. So I did know about her.
Okay. So you
from day one.
So you've definitely dealt the wrath of Carole Baskin. For sure. Okay. See, that's something I did not know. And seeing this documentary, I just thought the big cat community, or even just exotic animal community was a lot bigger. And then talking with Michael Kloss, he's like, no, it's actually really small. And that's when he started hyping you up. He's like, no, you got to talk to Kim about it. Kim, and he kept saying, Kim has a better story than I do.
Oh my God. He downplays himself so much.
He's like, I ran half marathons, but Kim has a better story than I do.
I won't even run a mile. So
so he always just kept talking about you, and it kind of prepared this episode in a sense of he alluded to a lot of things. So one question that I totally forgot and now remember. So in the last episode, you mentioned you had a dog with you that was in training to be in a couple commercials. So, and then now you mentioned that you work with animals that are going to be on TV shows or commercials or small projects, whether they be photo shoots, things like that. What is the proudest, like when you have like when mom says, oh, I'm a proud mom, and when their kid does something, they graduate college, oh, I'm just a proud mom. What was your proud animal mom moment from an animal that you worked with?
This is the thing. So working in production. So, I mean, obviously I do a show in Universal Studios. So I host a show by myself, which is just showing how we train them for the movies. And so I'm training animals in that show when they're not doing production work. And sometimes working in production, you can train animals. Like you can train animals for a production, but it doesn't mean you go on that production. So it could be another trainer takes it, or somebody who's been with the company longer could take it, even if you did some of the work. But it's still proud. Like anytime my animals go on a job, even if I'm not the one going,
Yeah.
you know, and I have been on jobs with my dogs. It's nice when even if you hear the trainer text you like, hey, so-and-so did great today, or they did what they were supposed to do in the shot. And it's just like, you feel kind of proud because you're like, I trained them. Like,
Yes.
yeah, of course they did good. Like, you know, you feel proud. I mean, I have a lot of those moments. One of the dogs that I worked with, I got him about a year or two ago. And he came and he was he's a little skittish. So we had a lot of things to work through, because when you have a dog that works in, you know, in Universal Studios, we use him in our shows, and he comes and lives with me. And then you could take him on set. There's so many different things that can happen, right? So there's different people, there's different lighting, there's different things that you have to take in, and you have to have dogs that can adapt to those things. And so part of that is training them sometimes to be able to be very adaptable to different places, different situations, stuff like that. So over time, I got him when he was younger, so I got to kind of help groom him to be better. We also do the Grinchmas show every year during Christmas. And so he was going to be one of the Grinchmas dogs. So I got to kind of like train him for that, and that's like a fun thing. Grinchmas is so much fun every year during Christmas. But it's just, I don't want to say a specific moment, but there's just a lot of little moments where, you know, if my dog goes on set and they do a great job, you know, it makes me like really, really happy.
Yes.
Or even if I get to be a part of the project, and let's say, you know, at the end of the day, my name's not the one in the credits, I know I did something that helped. And so I am a team player. So if I can be part of a team that does something great, that makes me happy. So it's a lot of little moments.
Okay. Yeah, I think it goes into living vicariously through others. You know, right now you said, even though I'm not credited, the fact that I worked with that dog, I feel like for me it's a victory. And that's incredible that you have that mentality. Because so a story, it just reminded me about a story about living vicariously. So my thing was USC. My buddy went to USC, and that was such a big moment for him and also me, because that was always my dream school. So I'm like, yo, congratulations. We went to USC. He's like, you went to USC. Congratulations. And it's always one of those, that's awesome that you have that mentality too, because that means you're a team player and you do it for the love of the animals, not for the recognition. And that's something that I think that a lot of people might struggle on. It's like having big ass projects and you're like, I've trained that dog for the past 2 years and my name's on it. What the fuck is wrong with this? You know, like, y'all want to quit now. You rage quit. That's awesome that you have that
at the end of the day, it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about them. And I think that's what people lose in life, but also when you work with animals, because it's easy to look at the glitz and the glamour and, oh, I've got this tiger and this animal, and those are great. And don't get me wrong, like, I love having those memories, and sometimes having photos reminds me, like, I look back on stuff, I'm like, man, that was such a great time. But it's about the animals. So even if your name's not there at the end, or, you know, you don't feel you get the credit, if you did the work and it worked out and those animals are happy and they're healthy, and that's thanks to you, like, be happy, man. You did your job. You did a good job.
God, you're such an animal lover. That's incredible though. It's that's always good to know with animals, because I think this episode has been one of those educational episodes about the animal community, the big cat community, exotic community, working with animals, just because it's so competitive and so limited. You know, there's not a lot of what you do out there.
No. There's not.
So now let's talk about the future. I don't know why recently I've been maybe quarantined. Maybe I've had a lot of self-reflection. And and it's worked out for me. I have been all about putting things in the universe. So for the future, what do you, no, not what you think, what will happen to the future of Kim working with animals? What do you see yourself doing?
I like that. That's a good question.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, like I said before, as you go in your career, you learn more. So you learn more, like, how to be better at what you do, or maybe what direction you want to go in. And you'll find a lot of people who worked with animals in the past or the future have started in entertainment, or have kind of worked at small zoos, or maybe not the big accredited ones, right? So everybody starts somewhere. But I definitely think the point of growing is that even if your opinions change or your perspectives change, that you stay neutral and you try to grow yourself. right? Instead of pointing the finger so much at other places and other people.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, I am still in school right now. So when I moved to Florida, I had to wait a year before I could go back to school. I'm
Residency?
transferring. Yeah. So I'm
Okay.
going for biology.
Okay.
So I'm transferring to UCF next semester. So I have about a few more years left in my schooling, but I want to get my bachelor's because I put it off for a long time. So finish my bachelor's in biology. For me, I want to go more science realm.
Okay.
So I want to start diverting my job a little bit more towards science, biology, animals in the science realm. And so hopefully I can kind of gear what I do more towards science-based stuff. I've loved the aspect of my jobs. I don't regret any of it. I loved every minute of it, but I definitely want to move to a more science-based aspect of my job. So wherever that leads me, I try to keep my things open. I don't like to just close myself off. And I've had a lot of amazing experiences and I wouldn't trade any of it, but I definitely want to go more science-based, more science realm.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's, first of all, congratulations on that, going back to school and also choosing biology. Oh my God, that is not easy. So
It's rough.
yes. So best of luck to you on
Thank you.
school and your future endeavors. And I think putting that on in the future, I don't know. It's really, things have gone very good for me since having this new mentality. I'm telling you, quarantine has given me a lot of time for self-reflection, and that was one of the big
positivity, man.
Yes. And it's worked out. Like, hey, I'm going to be doing this. And it happened. Like, hey, I'm good. The most recent one, hey, I am going to go, I'm going to date that girl. And
do
and it
it.
worked out. And I'm like,
Look at you.
I was like, what the fuck? Like, I went on a date with this girl. I didn't think it was going to happen. Okay.
Did it go good?
It actually went really well. Yes.
Good.
And you know, quarantine, I always say, man, quarantine ain't gonna stop me. But it was one of those where it was like, oh, well, maybe if I get it. I don't know what happened. I went from like, I'm going to do it and it's gonna happen. And it happened. And oh shit, like little things like that. You know, the most recent one was like, hey, I am going to go mountain biking. I ate shit and I'm like, cool, I did it. Let's keep going. So that's why I want to, from now on, have this mentality, positive mentality of putting things out into the universe. And for you to say that, one, you're going to finish your bachelor's, and one of the hardest fields, which is anything in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, is one of the hardest fields. So best of luck to you on that, on all your endeavors with working with animals, and now working in the science realm, because that will happen. And
I appreciate that.
yes.
I like that.
So before we end, oh man, I love this because we're ending on a positive note, because I've had a few episodes where I've ended on such a negative note, and then I feel like even though it's great content, I feel defeated at the end.
Yeah, you feel a little depressed.
Yeah, I feel depressed, and this was incredible. The fact that you ended on such a positive note. Before we end this, is there anything that you want to plug? Is there a social media? Or I don't know if you do that, because everyone's different.
Yeah, I mean, I think my pages are like, I have to accept friends, but I'm fine with anybody following me. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the most interesting person, but I post some cool things sometimes.
Okay.
But yeah, I think my handles on either I don't have Twitter, I'll be honest, but I have like Instagram and Facebook. It's just Kimberly Carabata. It probably says Kimberly Kloss on there, so don't get confused.
Okay.
But
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can follow me. I'm pretty cool with people.
Okay, cool. So I'll make sure to put down your Instagram down below in the description. But thank you so much for agreeing to be part of the podcast. I know you've been super busy. You work. So I know having spare time is very limited. So I definitely want to thank you for that. And thank you for being on the podcast and sharing your story with those that are listening. And I know that big things are coming for you. And for those that are listening, thank you so much. Remember, you can always listen to us, to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Google. And if you want to watch with your eyes what you hear with your ears, there we go. I finally said it. You can watch us on YouTube. Guys, thank you so much for listening. My name is Pedro, and thank you so much, Kim, for being on the podcast.
Anytime.
All right. Well, on that, guys, thank you so much. On that, I'm out.